Hello, how are you?
Especially so it's like yeah, but that's that.
That was our son, not ours. I know, I'm just saying, yeah.
All right, good morning. The back of your handout is just a,
Hey, guys.
come on, folks.
He's trying to keep.
I'm hearing 5 different conversations today. I'm sorry, Okay, back of your handout, I'll start it. Good morning. The back of your handout, this is just kind of a reminder of who the prophets are, where they sit in the timeline, and just if you need to refer to that, when Micah was writing his, when Isaiah, and so on. It's just good to have this once in a while. So we're going to continue. Kevin's been covering. We've been in the book of Micah for a few weeks. We'll continue with that this week. Next 3 weeks, actually. I'll do 2 weeks, and then Heather will finish up Micah in a couple of weeks. And I have, it was interesting for the first service during the worship time. Clint, and I don't know the young lady. Clint asked the young lady to do the doxology in her native tongue.
That's Frank and Diane.
That was Diane? Yeah, okay. See, okay. Anyway, and that reminded me, I'm fluent in 2 languages as well. You don't always, I occasionally, I'm fluent in American English. I'm also very fluent in gibberish because I speak that at home all the time. And I'm kidding, but I'm also not kidding in that in study, I'm finding, looking at the prophets as we've been doing for a while now, and we'll get into Isaiah. It's a real challenge. I'm not that familiar with all the prophets, or haven't been before. And kind of going through this, it's one prophet, you can find a reference to another prophet, and that leads you somewhere else. So it's kind of a very all-encompassing kind of look through both the Old Testament and where they all look forward into the New Testament. So it's so I personally, it's a great study. I'm very glad we're doing it. So if I sound like I'm speaking gibberish at some point today, it's because I'm still kind of figuring some of this stuff out. So we're going to look at, we're going to start in verse 5 of chapter 5 in Micah. And actually, verse 5 is divided up into 2 parts. And it's an interesting thing right off the bat with verse 5, in that depending on which translation you're reading, it puts a different spin on how we interpret that verse. Kevin ended last week with verse 5a, talking about, this is the prophecy about Jesus as the Messiah. And the first part of verse 5 says, he will be their peace, period. Other translations, though, continue it, don't put a period, but they continue that into the second half of verse 5. So, and it's read as, and he will be their peace when the Assyrian invades our land and marches through our fortresses, which is the verse 5b, which is the first part of today's lesson. So that kind of, it's a reminder, and I don't want to get into too much why one is one way and one the other, but it reminds us to keep in mind that throughout what we'll be looking at today, part of who is being discussed, who is being referred to throughout the rest of this chapter, this Messiah who will be our peace, who is peace and will be our peace and will bring peace, whatever the situation, whatever the time, whatever the location. And that's another thing that I struggle with a lot of this, is that particularly here in Micah, and we need to remember God is present at all times, in all places, in all things. So it seems like Micah at one point, for a few verses, he's talking about Israel and Judah at the time he's writing, and then and then later on it seems like he's referring to the coming of the Messiah, and then later he's referring to something that's going to happen in the future. So it's kind of like we're always jumping. I feel like I'm always jumping around in time. What's he talking about now? Where is this now? When is that going to happen? Did that already happen? So it's a lot to kind of keep in mind and study. So these are all kind of things that just strike me about this. And also, the way God has told Micah to write this out. Micah, he'll go through 3 or 4 verses of essentially bad news for Israel or Judah. And then here's 3 or 4 verses of good news. Then he goes back, here's more bad news. Oh, and then here's more good news. So you're always kind of jumping back and forth, it seems to me. Here's good news, here's bad news, here's good news, here's bad news. So these are kind of things I keep in mind. So we'll start first couple of verses starting with 5:5b. When the Assyrian invades our land and marches through our fortresses, we will raise against him 7 shepherds, even 8 leaders of men. All right, so a lot of people have taken this as a specific reference to an invasion by the Assyrians, when the Assyrian invades our land and marches through our fortresses. Because remember, at one point, Sennacherib invaded and God wiped out, 180,000 Assyrians. So Sennacherib was turned away from taking over Jerusalem after he had invaded numerous other cities. He did not succeed in taking over Jerusalem, and so he withdrew. Other commentators say, well, this is talking about really any time in the future. Assyrian here kind of stands in for any kind of invader, any kind of